Hey, good night, good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, I see Natasha is in, and Miss Adley is also supposed to be in. And we have a student in-house so far, who stepped out for a minute. So
Good
let's
day.
start. Good day, good day. Okay, so I have two of you online and a student that stepped out momentarily, but we got to get started. She'll return shortly, I'm sure. So what I want to do is I want to begin by reviewing homework number 3. Okay. And that's the one where we had that was James and Paula Brown. We had to do net worth statement on a TDS spreadsheet, total debt service ratio spreadsheet. Okay. So I'm not going to work through it unless someone has a question. But the assets are cash 14,340, real estate 210,000, automobile 46,000. The total is 270,340. On the liability side, credit cards $850, consumer loan 12,525, mortgage 68,975 for a total of 82,350. So we subtract that 82,350 from the 270,340, and that gives us 187,990. And the net worth is positive. So the answer will be A, positive. Okay. Any questions on that before we go to the total debt service spreadsheet? Okay, another student just admitted online. We're looking at the homework number 3. That's James and Paula Brown. We just looked at the net worth statement. We're now looking at the total debt service ratio spreadsheet. Okay. Again, unless someone has a query, I won't go through it step by step, the calculations, unless someone has a query. So we see that salary for James Brown, $750 a week. The monthly amount converted is 3,250. We use 100% of that. So the adjusted amount is the same. He gets a bonus, 6,000 per annum. The monthly amount is $500. We use 50% of that, so it's $250. Paula Brown has salaried income, $5,200. We don't need to convert that. So that goes in the monthly amount. We use 100% of that. That goes also in the adjusted amount. And then we total it for a total income of these two persons, total usable income for debt service ratio of $8,700. And then we go through the expenses, $1,140 for the mortgage, $348 for the proposed second mortgage. The car loan is $725 per month. But the first visa, Bob visa, $250 per month. The CB visa, is $100 per month. Total expenses for the month is $2,563. Total debt service ratio is 29.46 or 29.5 or 30.0. Okay, so any one of those three answers. Any questions before we move?
Okay, Mr. Nodded. So even though the card says nil Owen, you still have to do the percentage on the limit.
You do it on a limit because at any point in time, they can take it up to that $5,000 limit. So that's why we do the percentage of the for calculating TDSR we
Okay.
use the limit.
All right, when I saw the nil Owen, I didn't follow that rule.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
back to the notes. Yeah, go back to the notes, follow the notes. The notes say whatever between 3 to 5%. In this instance, we're told use 5% for all the cards. So use 5% of the limit. Okay, so
yeah, I got that, but because it said nil Owen, I just put that as 0.
right. But regardless of what the balance is, the balance could be 0, the balance could be 25 cents. The balance could be 5,100. They could be over their limit. You will
You still
use
do it the 5% of the limit.
yes.
Okay,
Unless, of course, the legend tells you use 3%.
something different. Okay,
Then you'll use 3% of the limit.
alrighty.
Okay. And in all of our instances, you'll either be using 3% or 5%. Any other questions? Okay. So let's I said that we would be looking at the credit, but we completed Campari last class. And I said that we would look at the credit fees method this class and finish this chapter, ending with the big three, as I call them, of character, ability, and insurance, using Campari. And it'll be character, capacity or capability, and collateral using credit C's. So that we'll wrap up or I should say, wrap up the chapter 7, looking at the big three. So let's do a quick review of the Campari method of credit assessment. And as you know, the Campari method is also known as the canons of lending. This is one of the oldest and most established methods of doing credit assessment. I don't know if it originated in the UK, but I was first introduced to this when I worked at Barclays. Later on, as I went to another financial institution, Canadian institution, I was introduced to the credit C's, which is widely used as well, particularly in America, in the USA, and I think possibly Canada, but generally speaking, a lot used very heavily in the USA. So, Campari, so character, let's look at character, which is the borrower's background and history. So we looked at KYC and the importance of KYC. We looked at the employment history, the credit history or the payment history, and the net worth. Those are 4 key areas to look at when we're looking at Campari. And we said that this is perhaps the most difficult category to assess. Character has some science and it has some art to it. Okay, but a lot of times in the final analysis, we are making a judgment call, so it's very subjective. So you find like the art tends to, in some cases, over over will be the largest portion of the assessment. Okay, so in the final analysis, when all the facts are presented, you still have to make a judgment call, and that varies from financial institution to financial institution, and also varies from loan officer to loan officer. Okay, but so I may have an opinion on something, but the approving officer may have a different opinion on it, which may be where the bank or your financial institution is entrenched. And so then that would be a prevailing thought in terms of the art, subjectivity. Okay. Then the next one was ability, A. Okay. And there were two areas that we were concerned with. That is debt servicing. And in that we looked at debt service ratios and calculations. And we also looked at income confirmation and calculating those. And of course, our last homework, we did just that. The income confirmation, that TDSR spreadsheet, the second part. Okay. So the debt service ratios, that first one, there are three ratios: consumer debt service ratio, the gross debt service ratio, which is also the housing debt service ratio, and then of course the total debt service ratio, which is the consumer and the gross debt service, and which we have paying most attention to in this course, the TDSR, because that's where most banks spend their attention on, the total debt service ratio. Right. The next one is the margin, which is the bank's profit potential, and there were two major areas that a bank. Okay, someone else just entered. Okay, so the next one was margin, where someone just entered the Zoom meeting. We're doing a quick review of comparing method, and we're now on margin, which is the bank's profit potential. Okay, two people entered the waiting room. You know. Okay, so hopefully we have everybody in the. Okay. Okay, so hopefully we have everyone in the waiting room now. Again, I'll repeat for those just coming in. We're doing a quick review of the comparing method. We had margin, which is the bank's profit potential, and the two main areas that are focused on where the bank makes the bulk of its money on loans, and those are the interest rate and fees. So the interest rate, you want to be sure that it is priced to reflect the risk. So you don't want to be charging 16% for a mortgage and 5% for 5% for a consumer loan. Okay, unless of course you're doing some promotion. Okay, fees. Most of the time, these are facility fees or commitment fees, and in some instances, they're one-time charge. So if you're doing a consumer loan for an individual, there's a one-time charge. If you're doing a mortgage, it's only a one-time charge. But if you're doing business loans, overdrafts, and credit cards, they are annual fees. So it's an annual fee that's assessed. When it comes to interest rates, we looked at two items. The first one was TLC, and the second was PACT, P-A-C-T. And we said that TLC focus, the focus of that was the product risk. Okay, would inherent risk the product, okay, whether that's a mortgage loan, a consumer loan, overdraft, credit card, what risk or risks does that product um, uh, uh, possess? And we look at the type of loan risk, we look at liquidity risk, and we look at customer risks finally. And the customer risk is what we focused on, which is what led us into PACT, P-A-C-T, because P-A-C-T concerns the customer or the client risk. And P is for purpose, A is for age of the client or the business, C is the collateral offered by the client, and T is the term of the facility. And generally speaking, business loans, consumer loans, um, they tend to be more risky than mortgage loans. Okay. And as indicated to the bottom there, we're gonna look at them in more detail, page 40, 41, later on. When we looked at PACT, I also caution you, because you may have remembered something similar called PAT, P-A-T. P-A-T concerns the loan application request, and PAT is the pricing or interest rates, okay? So there you have it. Credit or loan applications, PAT, purpose, amount, term. So that PAT is concerned about the loan application, whereas PACT is concerning the pricing risk when you're looking at the customer. Okay. Then we move from margin to purpose. And we said there were some questions you need to ask yourselves. Is it legal? Is it sound? Is it worthwhile? So for individuals, they may want to purchase an asset. They must not be speculative. Or they may want to do something else. You know, we looked at doing some other things like education, travel, and that sort of something, vacation. Businesses, they may need them for working capital or to purchase fixed assets. They may want to expand the business. And then, of course, we did the purpose term relationship exercise on page 42, where we looked at the various purposes of wedding, home improvement, investment, auto. And we said, what is the more appropriate method of financing it? Whether it was mortgage or consumer, and you can see some of them is one or the other, and some of them you can, depending on the circumstance, you can use either mortgage or consumer. Then we moved on to amount. Amount is the sum required. And again, page 36, if you want to follow in your manual. 36, is it too much or too little? Is it realistic? Is the borrower making a contribution? That's like their down payment, etc. And then we looked at two other aspects. In terms of individuals, apart from debt service ratios, lenders may use a multiplier of income as a rough guide to determine the maximum a person can borrow. For example, 3 times your annual income. And we said that most of the time now this is geared mainly towards staff. Okay, so in order for you to qualify for the staff rate, the loan does not exceed more than 3 times your annual income. If it's a mortgage, say for example, anything over that, then you attract the regular commercial rate. For businesses, apart from financial ratios, as a rough guideline, lenders may lend less than the net worth of the company or business. And the idea behind that is that if that business was to fold and they had to liquidate their assets and pay off their liabilities, they would get somewhere the net worth or a little less than the net worth. So you would want to lend a little less than the net worth in those circumstances. Then we looked at repayment. And that concerns the term and the payment amount in particular. So the areas we looked at was the term, is it consistent with the purpose and security pledge? So for example, you wouldn't do a 30-year loan or mortgage on a new car. Okay. And of course, vice versa, unless a person can afford it, you won't do a 5-year or 7-year, 10-year on a mortgage unless the person can afford it. Or it may be a lot loan. So the lot loan could possibly be done 10 years or less. Then, of course, there's the actual payment amount. That's the amount that they will pay monthly if it's an actual loan. The source of the payment, is it salaried income, rental income, business income, dividend income, etc. And then, of course, we said very, very important. There's some types of lending that have disciplined repayment programs, while others do not. So the examples of loans or credit facilities that have disciplined repayment programs are personal loans or consumer loans, mortgage loans or real estate loans, and business loans. Overdrafts and credit cards do not have a disciplined repayment program. So, for example, with a credit card, you can pay a minimum payment, minimum monthly payment, or you can pay the full amount. Okay. Then the last item we looked at was insurance. That's the collateral security pledged. And we said that there are several areas of this that we want to look at. So the first one is the question you want to ask yourself is, does the client have title to the asset? That is, do they own it? Or is it encumbered, that is held by someone else? Then we said there were 4 qualities of good collateral security: easy to acquire, easy to value, has stable value, and easy to realize if necessary. That means easy to realize, it means that as a bank, if the person cannot meet their payments, how quickly we can sell or divest of that asset, that collateral, in order to get our money back. Okay. And again, we will look at those in chapter 8, the different types of collateral security and documents. We will spend for collateral pledge, we'll be looking mainly at real estate. Okay, so we will be looking at how you assess real estate, which is the real estate appraisal. Banks may provide unsecured lending to individuals for small amounts, but for larger loans, they may take security, for example, real estate, cash, time deposits, fixed deposits, certificates of deposits, whatever you want it, stocks, shares. For sole traders and proprietors, personal collateral security often has to be taken from the proprietor. And for limited companies or corporations, the bank may take a debenture, which will cover all the assets of the business. And the debenture is a charge document or a pledging document. So similar like a mortgage document gives the bank a charge or a pledge over real estate. A debenture gives the bank or financial institution or the lender a charge over the assets of the business. And it may be the fixed assets, or it may be the floating assets, or it may be both. Okay, so fixed assets would be things like buildings and that type of stuff. Floating assets would be stuff like your stock in trade, your inventory. All right, so that's the comparing method. Character, ability, margin, purpose, amount, repayment term, insurance. Okay, so let's go to page, that takes us to the top of page 37. Okay, so the Grassy's method, some of these have already been explained in quite detail. So I won't go through those, particularly character, capacity, and collateral. But what I want you to do is on your in your workbooks or your manuals, whatever you call them, you should have sufficient space. And this is what I want you to do. I'm gonna on the board. I want you to do the following. Between where it says list and describe the C's of credit, there are many, and a few of the more important ones are dealt with here. So between that and character, squeeze in A equal assessment, semicolon, S equals structuring. And then for character, capacity, cash flow, the first three, put A just about, just in front of them. The next three, S, that's capital or contribution, collateral, conditions. And then the last three, credit history, connections, common sense, put A. Okay, so the first three A, the second three S, and the last three A. What that means is character, capacity, cash flow, credit history, connections, common sense are concerned with assessment of the loan application. Whereas cash flow, capital, collateral, whereas capital, collateral, and conditions are the structuring portion of looking at the loan. Okay. So character, capacity, cash flow, credit history, connections, common sense. Those are the assessment, the A. And capital or contribution, collateral, and conditions. Those are the structuring side, S. Everyone has done that? Yes, okay. All right, so let's look at our books at page 37 and the brief descriptions that are there. Character says know your client, his background or history, and use this knowledge to assess the risk. Okay, I'm not going to get too much of that because we spent a lot of time on character. Capacity is the same as ability in Campari, or capability is also used capacity or capability. That's the client's ability to meet payments. So we've covered that quite a bit in on the ability in Campari. Cash flow, again, that is a business's ability to meet payments. Is income consistent? Can the obligations or bills be met when they fall due? That is also ability, but normally we'll call it cash flow when we're looking at businesses. Okay, so we'll talk about businesses cash flow. The next is capital, the borrower's contribution. This is whether the borrower is contributing towards the project. So if they're buying a car, are they putting the down payment, 5%, 10%? Are they putting anything down towards it? Or what amount are they putting towards it? If they're getting a home, what amount are they putting down towards it? If they're doing a business startup or expanding their business, and they come to you for a loan, how much, when they say how much skin you have in the game, we want to know how much skin the client has in the game. So that's their capital or their contribution. And of course, collateral, we covered as well. That's insurance in Campari. Then the conditions. And we see there's two sections there, A and B. So With conditions, we consider any economic conditions that could affect a borrower's ability to repay, such as unemployment, seasonal work, etc. And then the B side of conditions are any special or additional conditions that may be applied by the lender to reduce the risk. So with regard to that, it is either to compensate for any economic conditions that may currently exist or unanticipated economic conditions, or it may be based on the overall assessment of the strength of the borrower. So if we feel that, for example, we may say to the borrower, could you bring in a guarantor to guarantee this loan? That's because we, while the assessment, when we complete our assessment, we feel that it may be strengthened if they bring in a guarantor, who, if this person is unable to pay, we can look to the guarantor, and the guarantor may be called upon to provide collateral, or the guarantor may not be required to pledge collateral, but we will be able to go after the guarantor one way or the other. So if they have collateral, we'll go after the collateral that we hold, and if we don't hold it, because we know that they have significant assets, we'll go after their assets. Okay. Credit history, that was actually covered under character. And here you can see remember I talked about sometimes people, they'll say, here's a five-step method of doing this, a 10-step method of doing this. Well, all they're doing is they're doing sub points, but they all wrapped up into one. So so here we have credit history. The credit history is a part of character. We look at that as part of character. Okay. When we look at capital contribution, that was part of the capacity or the ability, which is and cash flow or similar. They just redesignated it. So we say capacity and capability for the individual, cash flow for the business. So they just add an extra stuff. Okay. So when you dive down and take a deeper dive, you find that, hey, we could amalgamate them into some of these into one or more categories, and that's in the number of things we have to look at. Okay. Then of course there's connections. Okay. This particular person, the person borrowing, or who that person may be connected to, who's a person of influence. So if for example, the governor of the central bank was to come to me to borrow, I may tend to be, he will probably get his loan quicker than you or me. Okay, by virtue of the fact that the position he holds, we may, allow. So, for example, we may, he comes and he says he wants a $2,000 overdraft. Okay, we may not require that he brings in his letter, his employment letter. Okay, we say, hey, that's a $2,000 overdraft. I'm sure this man making $10,000, $12,000, $20,000 a year. Okay, and if he mishandles the overdraft, that's the governor of the central bank. Okay, we even take his backside to court. He can look bad. He could probably end up losing his job. Sure. Okay, the government could ask him to, step down, right? So, and then of course, the person may, the person borrowing may not themselves be a person of influence, but they may be connected to someone who's a person of influence. Okay, so I may be I may work, say, in the office of the Minister of Finance. Okay, So if I am, I don't have any fancy title like financial secretary, whatever it is. I'm just a clerk, but I work in the office of the Ministry of Finance or the Minister of Finance, right? Directly with him or with the junior minister or with the financial secretary, right? You may say, okay, you talk to Mr. So-and-so, yeah, man, that's a cool guy, blah, 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 right? And if you don't, and of course you're doing this privately, right? And, if he or she don't pay, give me a call, I'll, blah, 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 blah. So, so it may be a person of influence directly you're dealing with, or someone who's connected to a person of influence. Okay, and that's where the art part comes in. Okay. Also, the person may be a person of influence to the extent that this person may be the human resources manager, say the human resource manager of Atlantis. Okay. Provided everything looks good, I'm gonna probably give them a good rate. Why? Because chances are then they'll, by being the manager of human resources, they have some measure of influence or dialogue with all them hundreds of staff over there. Okay. And so, he or she may say, when the top person may be called the director of human resource at Atlantis. So he or she may say, even maybe one-on-one or even in a meeting, whatever it is, and say, I had a good experience with such and such and such. If you're looking for a good lender, go see Ben there, at this bank, blah, 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 right? So that's a person of influence. Okay. What may also happen is in terms of connections, you may maybe doing business with, let's say, the people who own Kelly's. Okay, and you say to Kelly's, well, if your staff come, for the mortgage, we normally require 10% or whatever it is. You do 5%. You send a recommend, you send them to us, right? And we'll do it. We'll shave off 1 or 2 percentage points of the interest rate. So, you'll find that when they're doing what they call it when the staff are being when you're new to organization and they haven't what you call it, familiarizing you with the staff.
Onboarding.
Not onboarding. Anyway, familiarizing you with the orientation. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. Orientation. So when you during orientation, you may say, oh, by the way, we have this arrangement with this bank that for personal loans, blah 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 blah. You get a better rate than at any other banks, etc. Okay, so again, that's part of connections. And then the ninth one, common sense. Okay, you see it says involves the lender taking a step back to look at all the information presented and asks the question, does it make sense? Okay. Does it make sense? And you recall the example I gave of the young man who's 25 and had this property and he needed $50,000. And basically he was trying to legitimize the sale of this property that he got from this known drug dealer. Okay, so property was well in excess of $100,000. Just a land alone, the consideration amount on the conveyance to him from this drug dealer was $20,000. So there's some red flags. So you need to ask yourself some questions. Does this make sense? And also, you also want to ask, does the borrower demonstrate the ability to make wise decisions. Okay, is this someone just willy-nilly just coming and borrowing money, keep refinancing, you know, at some point, while we have our quotas, and we'll tend to probably lend to them anyhow, at some point in time, you probably need to offer them some, some solid financial advice and say, listen, if you keep doing this, you can never be able to get a piece of property and own something of your own, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so you just keep coming and going to vacation and buying, just to go shopping foreign and coming back, and the next year you come in for more money for the vacation. At some point in time, have a conversation with that client. Okay. So any questions on credit Cs? So they have a character, capacity, of ability, cash flow, capital contribution, collateral, conditions, credit history, connections, common sense. Okay, if there are no questions, let's turn to top of page 38. 3 key factors. I actually call them the big three. The big three. First one, under Campari is character. Under credit Cs, it's also character. Under Campari is ability. Under credit Cs, it's capacity or capability. And then the third one is insurance under Campari. That's the last letter of Campari, I. And it's collateral under credit Cs. Okay. And again, just to recap about character, it's not there, but KYC, employment history, credit history, net worth. Okay, and you see that that's in blue. Okay, true blue. Yeah, there's something called true blue. So when you're talking about someone with character, this person is true blue. Why could have used silver, and then you say they have a sterling character, right? Okay, so true blue, or you may want to use sterling silver, or sterling character. Okay, debt servicing is for abilities. Okay, ability or capacity. I put that in green, because in America they talk about the main green. Okay, only cash pays loans. So that's concerned with debt servicing and debt service ratio calculations, income confirmations calculations, whether it's weekly, annually, different types of income, salary, bonus, rent, how you treat them. And then it's supposed to be gold, but gold wouldn't show up too much on too good on this. So it's kind of like a orangey brown. So what you call it, rolling in the gold. Okay. 4 qualities of good collateral security. Anyone remember the 4 qualities of good collateral security are? Sorry? The 4 qualities of good collateral. Yes. Easy to acquire, good title, easy to value, has stable value, and easy to realize, if necessary. All righty, so let's go through these through our chart on the top of page 38. So you see Campari, credit Cs, character. The main thought is will pay. The explanation, the person's willingness and propensity to pay. What does propensity means? The person has, for example, previously, their previous history shows that they pay. Okay, so if you have the propensity to, like this gentleman who about to be released, this guy who like sexual assault guy, right? They say he has a history, a track record a long track record of assault. Even when he's in court, he assaulted a female police officer while he's in court being tried. Okay, and also a minor, right? So he has a propensity for assault of females, right? So propensity is would you have a bent towards doing, right? You have a bent towards doing something. So willingness and propensity to pay, has met previous obligations and is meeting current ones. This is evidence of good character. The next one is ability for compari, capacity or capability, credit C's. The main thought is can pay. That is, you have the ability to pay, or the capacity or capability to pay. You have the financial resources, right? And that goes for individuals or businesses. Okay. And of course, the third one is insurance under compari, collateral under credit C's. And this is what if the client won't pay or cannot pay? This is your backup. Okay. The client either refuses to pay, although he or she may have the resources to, that is, won't pay, or simply cannot now pay due to a change in financial situation, such as job loss, or reduced work weeks or whatever, work days. In either case, the bank will rely upon the asset pledged as security, that is, insurance or collateral, for the loan in order to get its money back. Okay. Any questions on that? So again, the main thought for the first one is will pay, ability, capacity, can pay. The third one is what if they won't or cannot pay at a particular point in time. All right, so let's look at the chart at the bottom. To lend or not to lend? That is the question. Question of the day. Okay. So here's some combinations using well, yeah, we'll use compari as well as credit C. So in the first instance, the person has good character, they have sufficient capacity or ability, and they have good collateral or insurance. Should we lend to them? Yes. Okay. Question number 2. If the person has good character and good capacity, but no collateral, should we lend to them? Yes, we do. We lend to people now, right? Okay. So good character, good capacity. Yes, we lend to them. Question number 3. Okay. They have good character, but they don't have the capacity, but they have good collateral. Should we lend? No? Okay. I have one no and I have one yes so far. Okay, let me start with the no. Let me start with the negative. Why do you say no?
Well, see, you can say your ability to pay. You don't have the ability to pay without the ability to allow you to mark. So payments are going to happen at all.
Or not at all.
Not at all.
Right. So if they don't have the ability or the capacity, it don't matter how much sterling character they have or true blue they are, it don't matter how much they roll it in gold, okay, in terms of their assets, only cash pays loans. So you need that ability, you need a capacity, you need a cash flow, you need a capability, right? So why did you say yes? Okay. Okay, but if they don't have the ability, how would someone? Okay, all right. Believe it or not, you're onto something, because the answer to number 3 is no, or possibly maybe. Okay. Why maybe? The person may have an asset that the person may have an asset that you can they can turn, not you, that they can turn into a profit-making venture. Okay. Remember one of our examples, we had someone who when we were doing the net worth, he had 2 properties left to him by a relative. Okay. One he lived in one, and one was a property next door. Right. It may have been a shop. I think it might have been a shop. So let's say in this instance, this person has this, it used to be their granddaddy or Grammy's store, but Grammy don't use it no more, it closed down, and it was willed to them, so they own it. Okay. But their mother lives with them, and the mother have nothing to do. The mother is probably retired or may have been a housewife. Okay. So what you might want to do is you might want to say, okay, well, depending on the need, and let's say this is in a very heavy traffic areas, let's say somewhere in the Grove, or even over the hill area. Okay. And you may say, okay, well, I'll give you the financing to reopen the store. So while it was closed down, it was pretty much in good condition. So you may just have to freshen it up with a coat of paint, whatever it is, and buy supplies. Okay. The mother isn't doing anything, so the mother could manage the store. Okay. You pay the mother a little something for running it. She got a little money, right? And it brings in additional income. You put in a little convenience store there, or the mom may be a good cook. You put in one little takeaway, okay, for the mom, right? And then and because your Grammy or your granddaddy left it to you, right? Your mom will pay you something, either rent or some of the profit or whatever it is. Okay, so that would then generate income. That income may be sufficient to help bring you within guidelines. Okay, so one of the things when we are one of the things I learned early in my career is that even when you're declining a loan, try to give the client something positive or an alternative. Okay, so if a loan application is and I'm saying the loan application is declined, not the client. The application is declined. It has a psychological thing. Okay, so the loan has been declined, not the person. Okay, so the loan application has been declined. You want to give them, it could be they don't have sufficient equity, they don't have sufficient income, or the conditions may not be right for that. So let's say it's a business venture they want to get into. So you may sit down with them and say, listen, it's declined because we don't feel like there's a market for this business. Is there some other business that you think you can invest in, right? Or you may say, well, I see that you used to do such and such and such. Have you ever thought of so for example, they may have worked in the tourism industry, and on the side they did a lot of hair braiding. So you may want to say, hey, excuse me, do you want to expand that, right? Where you can do hair braiding on the side to bring in additional income. Okay, in the case of shortfall in ability. When it comes to in terms of the lack of equity or contribution, you may say, well, if you save up some more money and come back to us when you've accumulated more funds, then we look at it. So what you want to do is you want to give the client an alternative, right? Something that gives them a bit of hope. It may have been turned down because of poor payment history. You'll say, okay, well, you make the next 6 payments on time of that particular loan that's in arrears, right? Come back to us, we'll consider it. Okay, so you want to give, wherever possible, you want to give the client an alternative, okay, or some good news that they would leave not feeling deflated, okay? Because having a loan application declined, people tend to take it personally, very personally, even though you say the application has been declined or such and such and such, right? Okay, so that's where the maybe part comes in, right? 4, they have capacity, they have collateral, but their character sucks. Should be lent to them. Business is business. Yeah. So this is one of those instances, unless of course the current well, I should say the current, yeah. If you're declining it because of a current situation where it's showing poor payment history, that might be something that, in previously they were paying well, but something went wrong. Okay, so it's a temporary thing. Okay, so with the exception of with that exception, right? Then you would, that's one of those instances where you tell them, okay, if you make these payments, you say you got this new job, blah, blah, let me see you make the next 6 payments on that bad loan, and then we'll consider. But generally speaking, if the character sucks, and this is one of those won't pay people, kind of, not those can't pay who come on hard times, right? So this is what those won't pay, and you can see that from their payment history, and every other one is late or in arrears, right? No. Okay. I do like the teacher used to put that F on your paper in school. Put it in red. No. Okay.
No.
Okay. I mean.
I mean, what if you could structure it in a way whereas you sort of forcing their character to be in line with the bank standards?
Well, see, see the thing was, you can't change a person, right? If that's their character, you can't change that. Okay.
Yeah,
And that's what we try, even in relationships, right? If you see that fella ain't no good or that gal ain't no good, right? Stay away. What you messing with them for, right? That person, or everywhere they go, they causing trouble, loud mouth, combustion, stress, hypertension, right? No, you ain't one get involved with them. Then people, stay away from them. The red flags are there. Okay. Same thing with credit, right? The red flags are there. Don't get involved with them. Now, if they now have a job where it's salary deductible and it's solid, for example, a government job, right? I would take the chance, because then character, particularly if you have your quotas to meet, and if the bank's liquidity is sufficient, right? So for example, if I down to my last 1 million, I look in as a proving officer, I'm looking for the best loans for that 1 million. But if I have 10 more million to lend, Okay, I may slip this one in because I need to meet my quotas. Okay, so that's where some of the decision making come in, and some of the kind of are.
Sort of no, but like depending on maybe a few underlying factors, slight maybe.
Yes, yes. So so and one of those would be if you could get salary reduction. If they had a poor payment history in the past, unless or you have asked to bring a guarantor and have that guarantor back their guarantee with cash, right? You know, but you know, in that instance, if it is a salary reduction, prepare to have to dig into them people that guarantors money and end that loan probably before it start to, you know, and probably go into 2 or 3 months, and you ain't make much interest off it. Thank God you charge the commitment fee, so you make a little sum off that loan. Okay, because when you book a loan, you want the objective of that loan is to see that through to maturity, because that's where you're going to make your interest. You know, your interest income for the bank. Okay, so that is one consideration. The next consideration is ask yourself the question: if this was your money you was lending, would you lend that person? If this was your money, would you lend that person? Okay. Okay, let's look at a class exercise. Okay. So on the board we have here Henry. Henry has extensive assets worth 2.95 million, of which 1.85 million is in real estate and 0.65 million is in cash. The balance is in stocks and shares, vehicles, furniture, and jewelry. He earns $10,000 monthly. He is not married, but has one daughter who lives with her mother. Henry's credit cards are always over their limit. He has an action outstanding against him in the court for child support. And he had a poorly paid loan with Bay Street Bank that was just repaid 5 months ago. He wants to borrow $39,000 from your bank over 7 years, repayable at $750 monthly. Total debt service ratio would be 7.5%. Oh boy, if we could only have customers like that, eh? TDSR would be 7.5%. The loan should be approved because of the extensive assets, that is collateral, and large income capacity that he has. True or false?
Just to be the same example we were just talking about, I mean, well, false, he wouldn't lend, just depending on this, but of course, like we would have said a few moments ago, depending on it, and maybe if we get some additional collateral or maybe a salary deduction, we may could just consider it.
But he has collateral. He has collateral.
No, but is he willing to? I mean,
this man has almost 3 million. This man has almost 2 million. Well, $3 million in assets. 2 million is in real estate, and $650,000 in cash. $650,000 in cash.
But why you need our money if you anyway? I'd be asking a lot of questions on this.
But I would too. I would too. Right? Anyone else wants to? So we have one false, I take it. We have 2 falses.
I say false too.
We have 3 falses.
If we have all that, why he need 39K from us, like Sanchez said?
Okay, well that's true, but more important is his character sucks.
Yeah, because he's in court with child support, and he just repaid a bad loan.
Right, and it says his credit cards are always over the limit.
Over the limit.
I can't figure out where you get all this I said someone only making 10K a month. Yeah, I trying to get a source of wealth now from him now.
Well, I mean, it depends on how, 10,000 a month, that's $120,000 a year. If you've been investing, he might have, real estate, he may have taken advantage of some early land purchase, some acreages and stuff. Because some of those properties in the Family Islands are worth quite a bit of money. I remember there was someone who had there was this drug dealer who had disappeared several years ago. Well, not several, but like 30 odd years ago, in Eleuthera, and he had disappeared. They say he had recently sold about 13 acres, and he had gotten like about $1 million for it. And they just saw they found his car somewhere by a cliff or somewhere, some desolate place. It was a BMW. It was just running. Okay, the door was open. He was nowhere in sight. He just disappeared. Right. So that was like, I think that was 10 or 13 acres. So that's $1 million. That's he got that. He sold it for $1 million. So chances are, if he was in no rush to sell that, he probably going to get more than. So that's 10 acres, 13 acres for $1 million, $1.2 million, whatever it is, almost like $100,000 per acre. So you can imagine someone who bought 100 acres, right? So you can see how it can, it can appreciate. Also, if let's say he built a house 25, 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, and he built it 120,000, depending on where the house is, that house probably weighs now about $350,000. Okay. And so and then too, if he bought or built apartments or duplexes or whatever, rental units, again, by the time you add 3 and 4 of them together, he could easily get 1.85 million out of real estate. So it's not unrealistic. It's not unrealistic. But chances are he got that 2.95 by being unscrupulous. Because if he ain't paying, he had this bill, this loan, Bay Street Bank, that only was paid 5 months ago. Finally, his car's always over the limit. He has a daughter who lives with the mother, and she got to take him to court. Right? This man making $10,000 a month. He can afford to take care of this child. Right? The court will I think there'll probably be a minimum of, I don't know what the minimum is now for child support, but maybe it's $100 a week or whatever it is. Even if he had to give that, he wouldn't be in court. But it goes to show that this dude, he just hard at it, and he do what he feel like doing. Okay, so I ain't gonna lend to him because he could be a headache to me. Okay, and who wants to run behind a $39,000-$40,000 loan? Okay, well, I could lend twice that amount to someone who won one Mercedes Benz from Tiaplex, and they have salary deduction. You know what I'm saying? So. Okay, so that is false. Alrighty. So there you have it, the big three, or the 3 key factors. Okay, character, ability, insurance, character, capacity, capability, or collateral. To lend or not to lend, yes, no, possibly maybe for the third one, definitely no for the next one. Okay. Okay. So let's look at the review question number 1 for for chapter 7 on page 39. And like I said, the answers to these review questions are in the back of the book, but try to attempt these questions on your own in the first instance, and then see how close you've come to them to getting the correct answers. So again, this is one of those ones that have a fairly long narrative. You won't have to do this kind of question in the first 3 segments, true, false, fill in the blank, multiple choice. However, when you do assessment, there may be a 1 or 2 sentences, 2 or 3 lines required, but we'll get to that, and I'll coach you through that, so don't get bent out of shape over it. But how do you ratify, verify, confirm the information that is employment, income, current credit facilities provided to you by the client at the application stage? So if we so here's what you do according to chapter 7. The employment and income information contained in the employment letter may be verified by calling the company and speaking with the appropriate authorized party, e.g. the human resource manager. Remember that? We talked about that, right? Okay. Then additionally, the pay slips or pay stubs, recent pay stubs should be obtained and checked against the employment letter and bank records and statements in the event of someone who has a business. Okay. What else we got? And thirdly, so there's 3, existing credit facilities can be verified by obtaining printouts of the credit facilities if held with other financial institutions, or by checking your own records if the facility is with you. Okay. So those are three ways that you can verify or ratify, confirm information. Okay. So a short answer would be a question may say please provide one way of verifying the information provided to you by the client at the application stage. And so you may say one way would be by obtaining printouts of an existing loan or credit facility that the client has, or some to that effect. Okay, so so if you had a question, it would be short answer, nothing long. Here it's extensive because it's telling you, it's showing you all the various options, but you won't be asking you all the various options. You will be asked, what is one way of doing such and such. Okay, or it may say the employment income information contained, or then it's a payment stubs should be obtained. These are 2 methods of verifying. What is a third? Or you may have the first and the third one saying, what is a third method? Okay. Or we just simply say, what is one method of verifying? Okay. So that ends our chapter. Any questions? No? Okay. So let's go on to chapter 8, which deals with structuring, and we're looking at product pricing. Okay. So how do banks determine product pricing? So different interest rates for different clients and different credit facilities. So remember, different clients, that relates to what? clients. Client pricing is PACT, right? PACT, okay? Different credit facilities, that's TLC. Right? Okay, so different different interest rates for different clients and different credit facilities due to the variation in risk associated with each transaction. So there you have it. Last year it was the TLC and PACT. So that's coming up again. Okay. The product risk, just for just refreshment. Overall product risk using TLC, type of loan risk, liquidity risk, customer risk is one of those. It's the third one. Okay, and that takes us into PACT. Because in PACT, we're looking at the customer or the client risk. Okay, the purpose, age, collateral offer, term and facility. Right. So again, how do banks determine product pricing? First thing that's considered, and if you look in the top of page 40, one of the first things in that paragraph says there are different interest rates for different clients and different borrowing facilities because of the variation of risk associated with each transaction. This could include, but is not limited to, one, the nature and value of collateral. Secondly, the dollar value of the transaction. Thirdly, the viability of the transaction. Sufficiency of the cash flows, that is there sufficient cash flows in the business? Okay. Fancy word there, the ancillary earnings possible from foreign exchange, commissions, ledger fees, payroll services, etc. Right? Ancillary simply means providing necessary support to the primary activities or operations. So ancillary earnings would be those gained from foreign exchange that you may get from the customer. So the customer is a borrowing client of yours, okay, but they need to send a wire transfer out to pay for goods and services, or they need a foreign draft. So you would make commissions from the exchange rate and also from the wire transfer. So those are ancillary earnings. Okay, so they're not the primary earnings. And then also it says under general competitive environment. Okay, that's not on the PowerPoint presentation, but I will put it in before I send it to you. But it is in your book. Okay, the last item, under general competitive environment. Okay. Says the next paragraph, banks are in the business of lending money in order to benefit from the net interest income derived from the spread or the margin between the interest paid to depositors and the interest charged to borrowers. Okay, so the bank pays interest to depositors and it charges interest on loans. Okay, so the bank looks at that. Well, nowadays the interest rate paid to depositors for most of us is almost zilch. Okay, so whereas before the interest rate paid was like 2-3% on deposits, the interest received was say 10%. So there was a spread of, okay, so we paid them 3% on a deposit and we took 10% for a loan. That difference was like 7%. Okay, but nowadays we take in basically the whole 10%. Okay, so in the later on I'll indicate this is one of the product pricing stuff. Okay, so banks are in the business of lending money in order to benefit from the net interest income derived firstly from the spread between interest paid to depositors and interest charged to borrowers. Secondly, from other costs, that is overhead and salaries, these we have to consider these, right? Because they have to be paid. So when we are pricing our loans, we have to take these things into consideration. So that is why one of the reasons, for example, you'll add a facility fee or commitment fee, right? On a mortgage loan or personal loan, to get some money up front to help meet salaried income to your staff. Okay, and of course, there's the electricity and all the other stuff, the other expenses. Okay. And of course, again, the need to remain competitive will also impact pricing. So while we want to make as much money as we can, we don't want to price ourselves out of the market. So what we might do is we may test the market and say, okay, everybody else, the maximum they charge is 16%. Let's charge 17% and see if people still bite. Okay, or 16.5. And if people still bite, then 16.5 is what it is. Okay, so now you become the highest. But then of course you have to compensate in other areas. So for example, if I am known to turn my loans around quickly for approvals and for drawdowns, okay, I could charge a higher either fee or a higher interest rate. Okay, because I'm still maintaining my competitive edge, while the others may not be able to turn around as fast. So let's say my competitor is turning around in 48 hours, and I'm going to try to do it in 24 hours. Okay, but I get charge a higher fee or higher interest rate, right? And so the people say, I get my money quicker. It's like the passport office. Okay, I pay $50 to get my passport, a week or 2 weeks, or tomorrow I could get it by paying $250 or $300, whatever it is, whatever the fee is for an expedited passport now. Okay, so when we look at product pricing, particularly interest rates on loan products, we are considering margins or spreads. Okay, now I said use those words interchangeably. So there are three areas in which we consider those spreads. And the first is, as mentioned in the first point here, it is the relationship between loan and deposit interest rates. Okay, so spread or margin between loan and deposit interest rates. That's the first one. Okay, is the difference between interest rates on deposits. And I think some of these may be blanks that need to be filled in. Okay, the difference between interest rates on deposits versus those on loan products. So these are some kind of definitions. And then there's a third one that's not in the book. The difference between the bank's prime interest rate and the loan product interest rate. And that is the main driver nowadays for loan pricing. Okay, the difference between the bank's prime interest rate and the loan product interest rate. So the bank's prime interest rate may be 4.25. The product rate may be 10.25. So the difference between the 4.25 and the 10.25 is at 6%. Okay, so that would be your marginal spread. Okay, everyone has that last one. The difference between the bank's prime interest rate and the loan product interest rate. That's what drives it now, because the relationship between loan and deposit interest rates it doesn't drive it as much nowadays as it used to in the past, at least not in the Bahamas. Okay, in the US, maybe, because their market is larger. Okay, and so they could offer their savings accounts and certificates of deposit, they can offer high interest rates than we do here in the Bahamas, right? The same thing, the difference between interest rates on deposits versus those on loan products. Those first two used to be a major player several years ago. Okay. But the main driver, or the main definition, so to speak, for margins or spreads is this one, is the difference between the bank's prime interest rate or prime interest lending rate and the loan product interest rate. Okay. Well, it's the same, it's within the same bank. It's within my bank. Okay, so my bank's prime interest rate will, in the Bahamas, most of them, the prime interest rate is 4.25. So that's where they start. Right? The central bank is 4%. They lend to banks at 4%. Okay, banks tack on an extra quarter, so the bank's lending prime is 4.25. Okay, so anything that or anything above it is where you make your money. Okay, so 4.25 is our starting point, and so from there we go up. So when banks are doing, like for example, they have a car fare at the mall, at Marathon Mall, and they offering these extra low rates, 7%, whatever. Okay, that shrinks their margin, because normally they would charge 10, 12, 11, 13% on a car loan. Okay, so it shrinks their margin or their spread, right, from 6-7%, right, to like 3-4%. Okay, so if I'm offering 7.25 and my prime is 4.25, that's only a 3%. I'm making. Okay, and the banks do that to generate business. Okay, and the annual car fares are one of the ways in which most banks participate, and in order to do that. Okay, and so they compete, see who could come up with the best plan, right? So the more you move away from the 4.25 means the more money you make, and the difference between those two is your margin or your spread. Okay, and that's where your profit. Okay, you take that to determine your profit, because out of that spread or that margin, okay, you got salaries, you got electricity, right? You got fees, annual business fees, all the other things that come with it have to come out of that. That right. Okay, so that is why they will have these they won't offer that low rate for the whole year. Okay, only on right. Okay, because they know that's not sustainable. Okay, but if they could generate the volume, okay, if they could generate the volume, because chances are those people will probably come back to them at some point in time to refinance, and then when they refinance, they ain't refinancing at 7.25 or 6% or whatever it is. They can now refinance at a high interest rate. You're probably 11, 12, 13, 14, 15%. You see? So again, remember when we were talking about assessing in the earlier chapter, it might have been chapter 2, when we said that the persons who make a decision must have a knowledge of the industry and be aware of what's happening in the economy, et cetera, right? And, you know, I mentioned that with your board members, right? For those banks that are run by boards, you want to ensure that the people on those boards, while they may not all be bankers, right? That they have some sort of knowledge of what's happening in the economy, locally and internationally. And they have some understanding of how banks or we can operate and make money. Okay, and this relationship between interest rates, right? Margins and spreads, and how the bank makes its money. Okay, so that third point is very important. Okay, and it's deliberately left out of your book because I wanted that to be the whole third point to be one that you have to fill in the blank. Okay, and by writing it, it'll help you to remember it. Okay, so let's let's look at the top of page, the chart on page 41. Okay. First one has been done for us. Let's look at the relation product price and interest rate on loan products. And we'll indicate by an arrow going up or an arrow going down, where it's usually higher or lower. Okay, so the purpose, looking at PACT, P-A-C-T. Okay, so purpose on a consumer loan. Consumer loans are usually a higher risk, so the rate tends to be higher, right? So we have a green arrow going up, which means we make more money. Okay, on a mortgage loan, it's usually less risky. So which way would the arrow point? Downward. Okay, so the downward one I've indicated in red means we make less money. Okay, the age, the older person or security, the higher the risk. Up. Okay, any other takers for up? Yes, the older person or security, the higher the risk, so the interest rate should go up. Okay, the more established and healthy the business, the lower the risk, so the interest rate would tend to be lower, right? Okay, so the arrow would be going up or down, down. Okay, so okay, you tend to charge a low interest rate for the better quality. Collateral. The better the quality, the liquidity, because remember we said, you know, how easy it is to get to realize, okay, etc. of an asset, the lower the risk. Downward, yes, okay. The better the quality or liquidity, etc. of an asset, the lower the risk for mortgage loan. Down, okay. So what we see so far is that collateral has 2 arrows going in the same direction. Okay. Whereas purpose and age, they're inverse. One is going up, one is going down. When you compare consumer loans and mortgage loans. Term. Okay. The shorter the term, the less risky. However, you want to maximize your return in the short term. So the interest rate tend to be higher or lower? Higher? Any other takers? Think of your products. Consumer loans normally higher, right? Okay, so the arrow is going up. On a mortgage loan, the lender makes a return over a longer period, so the rate tends to be lower, usually medium to long term. So that it's going down. Okay. Alrighty. So for purpose, age, and term, we see that for consumer loans, the interest rate, the pressure tends to be higher. On the mortgage loan, the pressure seems to be less. And actually, in all cases, the mortgage loan, the interest, it has pressure, a downward trend on the interest rate. Only on the collateral do we see a downward trend on the consumer side. All right. And when it comes to collateral, we see that that quality collateral, when you have quality collateral, it will always have an impact, a lowering impact, right? On interest rates. All right. So whether it's a consumer loan or mortgage loan, in both instances, it has the effect of driving interest rate, or attracting, or should be attracting, a lower interest rate than normal. Okay. So commercial loans, point number 3, commercial loans versus personal loans and mortgages. The 3 points there are usually higher mortgage interest rates. That is, for commercial loans, they tend to be shorter term. They require a greater equity injection, and they also require a greater level of monitoring and controlling. Why is that? Here's a fill in the blank for you. Because the risk is greater for business or commercial loans. The fact that a lot of, most of our financial institutions have only recently, in recent years, 10, 15 years, had a section in the bank dedicated now to business loans, where previously we've avoided those types of loans, indicates how risky they are. And those are manned by people who are fairly skilled at assessing business proposals and for startups, or for going concerns, looking at the financial statements and looking at projections and seeing if they seem to be realistic. Okay, based on the industry historically, and also based on knowledge of the economy, what's happening and what's projected to happen in the economy. Okay, so the risk is greater for business and commercial loans, and so that is why the interest rates are usually higher. They're normally shorter in term. They require greater equity and injection, and a greater level of monitoring and controlling. So, for example, business loans, you may, a consumer loan, you book a consumer loan, and you pretty much, you kind of set it and forget it, so to speak. With a business loan, you have to review that every year. Okay, business loans are subject to annual reviews, similar to overdrafts, because they're very risky. So you review those every year. Annually. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so let's continue product pricing, and let's turn to page 43, and let's look at the spreadsheet here. Cable Beach Manufacturing Company Limited, and this is a not how all financial institutions do income assessment, but this is one way of doing income assessment from a foreign company. See what you're making. Okay. Hopefully this will make it clearer when we talk about spreads and margins. Okay, we're talking a bit about spreads and margins based on our prime lending rate and our actual product interest rate. Okay, the difference between those two is the margin, okay, or spread. Okay, so we look across here, so we have various columns of facility amount, the interest rate column, gross interest, cost of funds rate, that's what COF stands for, cost of funds. Okay, funding costs, annual net revenue, margin or spread. In your book, it may have ROE, but I prefer to use, instead of using ROE /spread, I prefer to use margin or spread. Okay. So in the first column, we have this company. The facility amount is 2.9 million. The interest rate is 8%. The gross interest is $232,000. How did we get that 232,000? Okay, so 8% of 2.9 million is 232,000, right? Okay. Now our cost of funds, okay, our cost of funds is similar to when we say our prime rate. Okay, the bank's prime rate. Okay, so if you think in terms of the cost of funds being the prime rate, okay, substitute the prime rate to help you understand. Okay, so the bank's prime rate or cost of funds is 3.1%. Okay, when you're doing business lending, particularly in the US, well, in international market, the cost of funds, technically, okay, the cost of funds is what it costs me to raise that money. Okay, so a financial institution would go in the money and capital market, and try to raise this 2.9 million. In order to raise that 2.9 million, they are able to raise it at 3.1%. Okay, so it is so let's say, for example, let's try to transpose that into the payment economy. So let's say I want to do this loan. Okay, I'm this bank. Okay, I'm this bank, and I need 2.9 million. But I don't have 2.9 million to lend this customer. But this is my customer, and if I don't lend to this customer, I can lose this good customer. Okay, so I go to Bay Street Bank. I say, hey, you have any deposits? I can borrow 3 million from you, 2.9 million, or whatever it is. Okay, and so Bay Street Bank said, yeah, I'll lend it to you, but I'll lend it to you at 3.1%. Now bear in mind now that they only pay in on deposits to their customers 0.0025, right, or thereabouts. Okay, but I have excess funds. Bay Street Bank has excess funds, and so Bay Street Bank will say to BIF's Bank, I will lend you this 2.9, but I'll lend it to you at 3.1%. Understand? Okay. So it means our cost of funds or funding costs is 3.1% of 2.9 million, which is $89,900. So that's how we get that funding cost of 89,900. Okay. Calculated to make sure that that's correct. If you haven't already calculated. Okay. So I am borrowing this money from another financial institution for 3.1% to make sure I keep this customer. Okay. I'm lending to that customer at 8%. Okay. What is my margin or my spread between what is costing me, my cost of funds rate, and my interest rate? From the interest rate that you're going to charge.
Yeah.
Okay. So the cost of funds rate from the interest rate, and that gives you that marginal spread of 4.9. Okay. 4.9% of 2.9 million is how much? $142,100. If you want to double check that to be correct, subtract 89.9 from 232,000. You get 142,100. Everyone's sees how we get that first row. Okay, so we're lending at 8%, so that'll give us gross interest of 232,000. However, it's costing us 3.1%, which translates into $89,900. That's what it's costing us. So we're gonna have to pay that in interest to Bay Street Bank. Right? So right on top, out of that 232,000, we're gonna have to pay Bay Street Bank 89,900, which leaves us with net revenue, interest income net revenue of 142,100, which represents 4.9%, which is our spread. Okay. Now remember I said we charge fees on facilities, facility fee or commitment fee, and on this we charge 1%. And because that's an annual charge, that goes under annual net revenue. 29,000. Okay, 1% of 2.9 million is 29,000. Correct? Okay. So when we add the 142,100 and the 29,000, we get 171,100. Okay. So our annualized projection total gross interest is 232 to the bottom. Our funding cost is 89.9. However, we make more than the 142,100 by charging the client 1% on this facility. So we increase we increase our earnings on this customer by charging them that 1% fee. And when we review this facility, we charge them 1% the following year on this facility. Whatever this facility is. This may be an overdraft, a line of credit, or something like that. Okay. So we understand that? Okay, well, I'm gonna check that you understand it. Okay, let's look at this one. What did I do? Okay. Okay, ABZ Furniture Company Limited. ABZ Furniture Company Limited, income assessment chart. This is similar to that one in your book, Cable Beach Manufacturing Company Limited. Okay, so the facility amount is 1.75 million. The interest rate is, I'll be charging them is 10.25. What is the gross interest amount? How much? I'm glad you found out July before the rest of us did. That's no humor, how you say that so quick. Okay, so 179,375.
Yes,
Yes, okay, that's 179,375. Okay, at least 3 people say that's what they get, so that's what it is. 179,375. Okay, now our cost of funds, in order to raise that money, it's costing us 4.75%. What is our funding cost? How do we get that? Sorry, you got what? 83,125. Anyone else got that or something different? You got that? That's 2 people. Do I have a third? Going once, going twice. Okay, we go with 83,125. Okay. Now, what is our annual net revenue? Annual net revenue. Remember, there's 2 ways we can work this out. $96,250. How did you work that out? Okay, so you subtracted the funding costs from the gross interest. So you took 83,125 from 179,375, and that gave you 96,250. Okay, what is our spread, our margin or our spread? %5.5. How did you get that? Okay, so 10.25 interest rate minus your cost of funds, 4.75, gives us 5.5. Everyone sees that? Yes, okay. The charge on the new facility is 1%. We're given that. Which is 1% of 1.75 million is 17,500. So our annualized projections. What is the gross interest? Annualized projection for gross interest. $179,375, yes. Okay. And okay. Funding costs is 83,125. And what is our annual net revenue? So we add the 96,250 and the 17,500, and we get 113,750. Everyone sees that? Okay. Good stuff, good stuff, good stuff. Okay. All right. If there are no questions on that, let's continue. We're not gonna look at maximizing the annual rate of return. Okay, so you do not need to concern yourself with that. We won't do that in this course. So let's go straight to usury rate, what it is. Okay. So there's three things it tells us about the usury rate. It tells us that it is an interest rate greater than the maximum rate that should be charged. 20% is the maximum interest rate that could be charged in the Bahamas. Okay. Usury rate is also an exorbitant or unlawful rate of interest. Usury is also the act of lending at an exorbitant rate of interest. Okay, so it's an interest rate greater than the maximum rate that should be charged, is an exorbitant or unlawful rate of interest, and usury itself is the act of lending at an exorbitant rate of interest. Okay, if you found charging more than 20% interest in the Bahamas, there is at least a fine. I'm not sure if there's a prison penalty, but there certainly is a there certainly is a monetary penalty. Okay. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay, no questions on that. So let's continue with page 44. Structuring collateral security types. Okay. Okay, so the first thing we will look at with collateral security types is the role of collateral security. We'll also be looking at lending values. We'll be looking at equity. We'll be looking at real estate appraisals. And you see the cost replacement value, number 2 of the 3 types is highlighted. And that's because that's the most commonly used one in the Bahamas. Although we find that sales comparison is being put in the forefront. We'll talk a little bit about that. We may or we may not talk about stamp tax, VAT and other cost calculations, legal documents. I'll see how it goes, because there's certainly some updates since this book, since the 2017. There have been some updates, but the extent to which we look at those, I'll determine that over the weekend. Then we'll also look at risks associated with overbuilding. Okay, and those are risks to the bank or lender, financial institution, and risk to the owner or the borrower. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is the role of loan security, right? And if we look at page 44, first paragraph, it says, all forms of credit represent risk to the bank at one level or another. Okay. Risk refers to the potential and or probability of loss occurring to the bank. Okay. So risk refers to the potential and or the probability of loss occurring to the bank. While no risk can be entirely avoided, and while no risk is entirely risk-free, lenders seek seek to minimize the impact of such inherent risk and justify their lending decision by obtaining some form of safeguard, which we call collateral or security. Okay, remember I said that insurance or collateral, insurance, compari, collateral, parentheses, that's your backup plan. Okay, what if they cannot pay or won't pay? Okay, that's your backup plan. That's that third, that third key factor, right? Or the third item of the big three. So lenders will seek to minimize the impact of inherent risks and justify their lending decision by obtaining some form of safeguard, that is collateral security, which in compare we call insurance. That's our insurance policy, our fallback. Okay. The security taken will act as a secondary backup source of repayment if the borrower is either unwilling or unable to repay. So the second paragraph reads, before that final point, the need to protect the lender relates not only to the character or integrity of the borrower, but also to the possibilities to events and occurrences beyond the borrower's own control. These could include the general downturn in the economy, theft or vandalism, fraud, mismanagement, strong competition, new technology, regulation or legislation, currency evaluation or devaluation, consumer tastes or preferences, and a myriad or list of other things that could result in the borrower's inability to service or repay the loan. Okay, and that's what takes us into that fourth. The security taken will act as a secondary backup source of repayment in the event of those occurrences. Okay, the level, type, and value of the collateral security taken will depend on the lender's interpretation of risk for each specific transaction and will be directly related to the value of the loan requested and the level of comfort the lender requires. Okay, so for a new car loan, we may say, okay, well, we will lend 90% of the car value or 95% of the car value, right? However, if it's serviced by salary reduction, we lend for the full amount of the car. Okay, so in that event, you don't take any collateral. Okay, for a house, you will say we require 10, 15, 20% down. Okay, depending on the type of mortgage. So if it's a commercial mortgage or investment mortgage, the required down payment would be more. Okay, so you may say, well, I will lend up to 90% for residential. I'll lend up to 80% for commercial. But for residential properties, I will lend up to 95, but you may have to take out something that they call mortgage indemnity insurance. So if you take out this mortgage indemnity insurance, which covers the 5% shortfall, so instead of you coming up with 10%, you only come up with 5%, because the other 5% is covered by this mortgage indemnity insurance. So if you default on, if the client defaults on the loan, the insurance company will pay that 5%. Okay, that the client did not provide. Okay, so again, the amount or the degree to which the bank would rely upon collateral or require equity injection by the customer will depend on the purpose and the purpose of the loan, the overall assessment of the collateral itself, and the overall assessment of the customer. Okay, so that's what that last sentence is saying, right? The level, type, and value of security taken will depend on the lender's interpretation of risk for each specific transaction, that is, whatever the loan is, and be directly related to the value of the loan requested and the level of comfort the lender requires. Okay, so that takes us to lending values and lending value ratios. So let's flip over to the next page. So, lending values. The paragraph reads, lending institutions will grant loans against real estate using a lending value ratio. Okay, so the collateral we're considering, like I indicated, would be more mortgages and real estate. It's the collateral we're going to focus on in this course. So lending institutions will grant loans against real estate using a lending value ratio. This ratio is the loan to asset value ratio. And some call it the LAR, LAR. Okay, loan to asset value ratio, which is either the loan as a percentage of value, LPV, or the loan as a percentage of the cost. Okay. The loan to asset value ratio, that is the law, the LPV, LPC, is a loan amount expressed as a percentage of either the purchase price, the cost, or the appraised value of the property. So that's how you get whether it's LPV or LPC. Okay, LPC is the cost, the loan as a percentage of the cost of the real estate, as opposed to loan as a percentage of the value. The bank usually bases its lending decision on the lower of the purchase price or the value of the subject property. Okay, so you could have a property costing 100,000 and it's valued at 110,000. Okay, so let's say the property is appraised at 110, but if someone comes to you and they are purchasing that property at 100,000, because very seldom would you get would people normally purchase properties the same as the value, although there are instances. So there could be an instance where the value is 110 and the purchase price or the cost is also 110,000. In that instance, there's no difference between the value or the cost. However, in the first example I gave you, the cost is 100,000. The value is 110. So even though the value is 110,000, the bank would generally lend you on the lower. So if I would normally lend you 90% or 95% as a mortgage product, I would lend you 95% or 90% of the 100,000, not the 110. Okay, and that's because the banks tend to be, more conservative. So if you, in terms of economics and marketing, the idea is, even though that may be what the value is, because I now bought that at $10,000 lower, that's actually now the market value. That's now become the value. Okay, because that's what the purchaser and the seller have agreed. They've agreed to that price. So the purchaser and the seller have agreed to 100,000. So that becomes your market value on your cost. And so that is why the bank would look at the lower of the two. Okay. If someone comes to you and the property is valued at 110,000 and they're buying it for 120,000, the bank ain't gonna look at that, right? What they'll still do is if they do look at it, let's say the numbers, the ratios and other things, character and ratios, debt service ratios pan out, but they'll lend at the 110,000. They look at the low of the two. So if the cost is 120, but the value is 110, they look at the 110 to lend. Okay, so any amount that you have to come any amount above that 90% or 95% of that 110,000, you're gonna come up with in one form or the other, either in cash or in kind. So you may pledge another piece of property or something. Okay. Is normally come up with a cash or another piece of real estate when it comes to mortgages, right? So so lending values or lending value ratios are basically the measurement used by lenders to express how much they are willing to lend against an asset. In this instance, a piece of real estate. Okay, so you may want to jot that down there somewhere in your notes. Okay, lending values or lending value ratios is the measurement used by lenders to express how much they are willing to lend against an asset. And as I said previously, the lender usually bases its lending decision on the lower of the purchase price cost or the value of the property. Okay. I'll just give you a few more seconds to make sure you get that first point down. The measurement used by lenders to express how much they are willing to lend against an asset, e.g. a piece of real estate. Okay, so what's the difference between LPV and LPC? Just to restate, LPV or LTV, depending on what your financial institution uses, some says LPV, some says LTV, is the loan as a percentage of value. Okay. Those who say LTV, they say loan to value or loan to cost. Okay. Those who say LPV says loan as a percentage of value. They're the same thing. Okay. Okay, so in the book we have an example. So the calculations. Yeah. Okay. So the calculations are as follows: LPC or LPV is a loan amount over the asset cost or value. Okay. Remember now we'll use the low of it. Okay. So in this instance, Mr. Bethel owns a duplex, middle of page 45. Middle of page 45. Mr. Bethel owns a duplex that is valued at $250,000, and he has taken out a mortgage loan against it in the amount of $175,000. The LPV would therefore be 70% determined as follows. The loan amount, $175,000, divided by the value of that real estate, $250,000, times 100 gives us 70%. Everyone sees that? Okay. All right. Let's go to page 101. To 104. Martin and Sherry Road. Martin and Sherry Road, our case study. Okay. So what is the current LPV, LPC? Okay, so the equation again, the loan amount divided by the asset cost times 100 gives you the LPC or LPV. Okay, so if we want to know, okay, we have an extract of the appraisal, but we don't have the full appraisal. Okay, in this instance. So where do we get the loan amount?
About $30,000.
Okay, the loan amount we're looking at is we're looking at the current LBV LPC. So we want to determine what the current value of their property is. That ratio. So what is the loan amount? Where do we get the loan amount?
$50,000.
The current LPV, they haven't gone to loan yet. What is the current? Okay, said another way. What is the mortgage loan amount?
Would
Right.
that be the 76,935?
Yes. That'd be the 76,935. Okay. We go to page. Remember I said we flip in between page 101 to 104. So we look at the mortgage statement. Right? Right? Okay. The mortgage statement, the current loan amount, I have it circled on the screen. Okay, 76,935. So that's our numerator, or our top number. Okay. And what is the current value, collateral security value for our denominator?
275,000?
275,000. You also get that from the mortgage loan statement, right?
Yeah.
I've circled it on the screen. I circled it. Okay. So if you're not, so in this instance, we're not given the full appraisal. So we don't know. So the appraisal will tell us what the current value is, but we don't have the appraisal. Okay. So in the absence of that, and we're not given that information in the narrative, okay, on page 101. So the only other place we could get that information from is the mortgage statement. Right. So the current loan amount divided, which is 76,935, divided by 275. Everyone sees where we get those figures from, right? If not, look at the screen. Okay.
So why would we use the 76,935 as opposed to the 77, as the 77 is the payout?
Because you're looking at the current excuse me, the current principal balance, that interest accrued, remember now we're still looking at accounting, and we're looking at something that is fixed rather than static, rather than fluid, right? So just like in accounting, at any point in time, we're looking at something at any one point in time. So we're looking at principal balances. Because if we start, if we start doing accrued interest, by the time, see, this statement was printed February the 4th. If we're considering this, if we get this this statement March the 4th, then you'll have to calculate a month's interest. You don't want to start doing that. Okay, so it's a logical thing to do would be standard accounting formalities and procedures by sticking with your principal amounts. Does that help does that help to clear it up?
Yeah, I mean, I understand it. Yeah, I understand.
Okay, so you're looking at the principal amount, the current principal amount. All right. So 76,935 divided by 275,000 times 100 gives us what?
28%.
28%. Yes. Okay. It gives us 28%. Okay. So what it means is that currently the principal balance of this loan represents 28% of the value of that property. What is a good position to be in. Okay. So the bank only has a 28% stake in my house. I mean, not including accrued interest. So if you're just looking at the principal balance, you know, I have an excellent equity position, and that's what we're going to look at next. Equity. Okay. But I'm going to end the class looking at the equity, because we need to look at the two of those jointly. So in the next 5 minutes, let's see if I can close it. So the next one is equity. Okay. What is equity? Let's keep your fingers there, and let's go back to page 45. Right. It says equity is any dollar value or the amount you own in real estate property, less any loan or other encumbrance outstanding against it. Okay. Equity is any dollar value or the amount you own in real estate property, less any loan or other encumbrance outstanding against it. And in the book, you see it talks about legal encumbrances such as real property tax. Okay, that would rank ahead of a mortgage. Okay, so if a bank has to sell a client's property, real property tax will come out of that first if there's any outstanding, excuse me, real property tax. Right. And in the case of condominiums and a lot of properties in the Freeport area in the bonded area of Grand Bahama, Freeport, there are service fees. Okay. And so they rank ahead of the bank's charges with. Okay. So using our same example of Mr. Bethel, right? Okay. So we say that equity is any dollar value or the amount you own. And using the example of Mr. Bethel, the property value is $250,000. Less the loan outstanding, which is $175,000 for Mr. Bethel. The equity is $75,000. Okay. So his outstanding loan as a percentage of the cost is 70%. And when we look at his equity, what he owns in it, he owns 75% equity in the property. Okay. So the LPC or LPV tells you what percentage you still owe the bank based on your the cost or value of your property. Equity gives you a dollar amount of how much of it you own. Okay, so let's look at the rules. Let's go back. Page 101, 102, 103, 104. Okay, what is the rules? Current equity. So what is the first thing we have to get? Property value. Where do we get the property value from? From the mortgage statement. Okay, and that's 275,000, right? Okay, so on the screen I have it circled. Okay, the next screen, what is rules? Equity, 275 is the current value. What do we have to subtract from that? The encumbrances, the only encumbrance that we are aware of, because we're not told in the write-up that there's any outstanding real property tax. So on page 101, they don't say that there's any outstanding real property tax. So the only encumbrance we know about is the 76,935 mortgage with us. Okay. So we take that out and we get 198,065 is their current equity. So out of 275,000 value, they have almost $200,000 equity ownership, which is quite healthy. Okay. Another way of saying that is they own 70% of the property. They have a 70% stake. As evidence for when we did the LPC or LPV. Okay. All right, so I'll leave it there. We'll look at real estate appraisals next class. A reminder that homework number 4 is due. That's the mock midterm or interim exam is due on Tuesday coming. Okay. You should be able to complete that. I think there's only 2 questions, but if you did do reading and you understood what you read, you could have completed it. I sent the information about those, the 2 exceptions. I think there's one in section 2 and one in section 3, right? But we've completed all of chapter 7, so you should be able to complete the homework. If you have any questions, not about what the answers are, but you need some direction or help, shoot me an email. But don't wait until Tuesday to shoot me the email. So send it to me before Tuesday. Monday the latest, but not everybody, because Monday I may be in Bimini, so if I in Bimini on Monday, I ain't looking at no emails. Okay, so but we look at real estate appraisals. Those of you who are currently online, there are about 4 or 5 of you. If you could try to make it, I know one student informed me last week that she will be she won't be able to attend class that evening. But for the rest of you, please try to come in, because we're going to physically look at the full appraisal for Martin and Sherry. Martin and Sherry rule. We're going to be going through that exercise on page 48. Okay. You see on 47, there's a list of items. So we're gonna go through the appraisal. We're gonna go through the appraisal and we're gonna see to what extent we have that appraisal has those items. Okay. So does the appraisal have 16 of those items, or none of them, or most of them, or to what extent is a good appraisal? Okay. So we'll have the green. I'll bring the green binders, which have the full appraisal in it, and you'll have to be in class in order to fully appreciate that exercise. Okay, so again, I'm gonna appeal to those of you. I know some of you have to work late, but you're gonna have to prioritize whether this course means more to you than put an extra hour or two on the job. Again, for another 4 or 5 days. So it's not the end of the month yet. So hopefully you'll be able to get some excuse, be excused rather from having to work late, or try to order your work so that you don't have to work late. Some people, it's a part of their job function, but please, the extent to which you can, try to be in class physically Tuesday coming. Okay. So I think that's all the announcements. Yes, and of course, I sent out the I sent my email to the last class is the 31st of August, and the final exam is the week after. And that last class, you'll do a review. Any questions that you have or things that you want to focus on, you can send me an email, and I will make sure that that's something that is definitely addressed in the final class in the review. Okay. So thank you very much. Good night to everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.